Welcome back to Trove One, everybody, and welcome back to the solid axle swap. If you haven't been following along, we're doing a solid axle swap on our 2001 Chevy Suburban. We're putting this Dana 44 out of a Dodge Ram under it. We're using the Tahoverlanding solid axle swap kit, which makes this a whole lot easier than designing and rigging up something yourself, and there's a whole lot of benefits to it. So if you haven't seen the first two videos, I'd recommend going and watching those so you can kind of see where we're at in the process here. But tonight we're just going to jump right back into it. What I'm going to start working on tonight is a few things that have to be done to this axle. I'm not going to get everything done because I'm still lacking a couple little things that I haven't gotten around to picking up, but we're going to get started prepping this axle to go into the Suburban. So the first thing that I need to do is remove this sway bar, and then we've got to cut these brackets off. So this bracket needs to be cut off right here. This bracket needs to be cut off right here because those are going to be in the way of stuff later on. So we're gonna get this removed and then work on a couple other things on the axle. All right, now that we got that removed, I need to take off these old radius arms. I just never stripped these out. We're gonna get these removed because we don't need those anymore. That bolt was seized in there pretty good, so, but nothing a carbide blade won't handle on the Sawzall. Got that one out. Get the other one out. All right, now that those are out of the way, I need to remove these old wheel hubs. So I got a wheel hub on both sides. I'm gonna take this off. That side also has a brake caliper and brake rotor. I'm gonna remove all that, get both ends clean, get everything off there so that we can put the new ones on. All right, guys, I've stripped everything off the axle. I think I need to at the moment. So I got the wheel hubs removed off both ends, brakes removed, and I took the panhard or track bar, whatever you want to call it, this bar off because we'll be replacing that with that one right there. We'll build a custom one for it. So we're getting to one of my very favorite things about the Tahoverlanding solid axle swap. And that is the way the brakes and the hubs work. So let me show you this, because to me, this is one of the coolest things about this. Okay, so this is the Dodge hub that I just took off. As you can see, that has 5 lug bolts, which will not fit a Chevy wheel. So this hub is useless to us. We don't need that. The cool thing though is, this is a Chevy GMT 800 hub. This is the one I took off of our Suburban. If you look at the back end of these, would you look at that? They are basically identical. So this hub right here will bolt straight on to the end of that Dana 44. So this is a GMT 800 hub. Now, what we're gonna be using is this right here. This is a GMT 900 hub. So GMT 800 is the Chevy from 2000 to 2006. GMT 900 is 2007 to 2013. They changed these hubs up a little bit. Bolt pattern's the same. They're basically identical. But what they did, at least this is my understanding, is the GMT 800, the older ones like this, these require the pressure of the hub nut on the axle to put pressure on this bearing to keep this bearing from falling apart. That's why the torque specs on these are super important, because if it's too loose, your bearing's gonna fall apart. If it's too tight, you're gonna wear your bearing out. So they fixed that on the GMT 900. Some say it's because they wanted to run the same bearings on four-wheel drive and two-wheel drive, so they had to make less parts. I don't know the reasoning, or that this is true, but this is what I've been told, so I think this is correct. The GMT 900 has a different type of bearing, so it does not have to do that. So I'm going to run these just because they're better. The only problem is they changed the ABS sensor in them. So I'm going to pull the ABS sensors out of the GMT 900 hub and put it into the GMT 800. They changed the way these sensors work on the 900s and the 800s. So I'm going to swap the sensors. So we're going to run GMT 900 hubs with GMT 800 sensors on our Dana 44 axle. So the thing that I really like about this is, we're using this. So this means I can run my factory Chevy wheels and everything. But I also am going to get ABS capability, which for me with 6 kids in the vehicle is pretty important. I want this as safe as possible, and I want it to run down the road like as safe as it was stock. So I want ABS to work. It's the reason I wouldn't do a lot of other kits. This is the only one that I have seen that I would do. And this is a big part of it. I can keep ABS functionality on my Suburban, which makes it a little bit safer. So we're gonna swap these sensors. We're gonna run these hubs. And another cool thing that I'll mention, Tahoverlanding makes a kit for the rear 10-bolt axle on these Suburbans. And what it is so these axles are a semi-float axle. If you don't know what that is, you can look it up. But like the 3/4 tons have a full float. Well, not necessarily the 3/4 ton Suburbans. The 3/4 ton trucks have a full float. Some of the 3/4 ton Suburbans have a 14-bolt full float. My 8.1 does. It is a 14-bolt full float in the back end of it. My 1500 HD has an 8-lug axle, but it's a 14-bolt, but it's like a light-duty 14-bolt, and it's a semi-float. So they got like 3 different axles: 10-bolt semi-float, 14-bolt that I believe is a semi-float. It's slightly not as heavy-duty as the 14-bolt that people say is the best axle. Like that's one that people use in a lot of rock crawlers and stuff. It's a really good axle, but that's the full float 14-bolt that's in like the 2500 HD trucks and some of the 8.1 Suburbans. All that to say, Tahoverlanding makes a full float kit. They'll send you the axle shafts, and you can run GMT 900 hubs on the back end. They make an adapter that bolts on here, bolts onto your axle, and then you change out your axle shaft. So it allows you to run this hub on the back. So you can run a GMT 900 hub on all 4 corners, which means you could carry 1 spare and you could put it on any corner of the vehicle if you have a wheel bearing go out, which is just super cool, especially for off-roading and overlanding type stuff. I will probably put that on my Suburban at some point because it's just a really cool setup, and it creates a stronger axle. Because your failure point on the 10-bolt, generally speaking, the first thing that's going to fail is going to be your G80 locker. At some point, that thing's going to come apart. The second thing that's going to probably wear out first is going to be your bearings, your outer bearings on the axle. I've replaced them on my 10-bolt on the Suburban. We had to replace the outer bearings. They were starting to leak. They were starting to wear out and make some noise. So those bearings are smaller than these. They're not as strong. So it's a really cool swap. I want to do it. But it's just cool how all of that works, that you can run these hubs on all 4 corners. You can do a solid axle swap and maintain ABS. It's just like my favorite thing about the whole system is just the compatibility, the way all this works together so smoothly. It's like this axle is designed to go under it, basically. So all that to say, let's swap these sensors and bolt on some wheel bearings. These are 2 different brands of wheel bearings. So we'll see for sure if the sensors swap over directly. Just unbolt this, pull this guy out, unbolt this one, pull this guy out, and we'll stick him right there. Bada boom, bada bing. Where'd my bolt go? I set it here somewhere. Guess I can use this one. Oh, there's the right in front of me the whole time. All right, now we can just stick this hub on here. Just like that. Bolt her up. And you don't have to use the GMT 900 hub. You can use the GMT 800 hub on this. You just want to make sure this hub nut is torqued down to spec. I just prefer the 900 because it just makes more sense to do the 900 because it gives you more flexibility. All right, I've got both hubs on now. So we are now running Chevy hubs on a Dodge axle, and it works perfectly. Okay, so I got one other thing I forgot to cut off earlier that I'm gonna go ahead and cut off now. So on this side, this is gonna be the passenger side once it's in the vehicle. But this bracket right here, I need to cut this out about right like here. I just got to cut a square of it. And that's because the new panhard / track bar, whatever you want to call it, that goes right here is going to need to come up into this area and it'll hit right there. Just got to trim out a little chunk right there and that'll clear that. The other side's good. It's just to clear the panhard bar there once we get it in. Actually, now that I looked at it a little closer, I think I'm going to trim that back a little further because right down here is where that bar is going to go. And depending on where it sits, it could still hit. So I'm going to trim this back just about to that weld right there. I'm going to go ahead and trim a little bit more back, I think. There we go. I think that's a little better there. Might not need to be that far, but we'll make sure that's going to clear. All right, guys. So with those things done, let's talk about brakes for a minute because I want to go ahead and get the brakes put onto this axle. So the way the brakes are going to work is, well, it just works out really good. So this is the Dodge brake rotor that I just pulled off. So obviously that's not going to work. That doesn't have the right lug pattern. This is the brake rotor that I took off of the Suburban when we took it apart. So this does have the right bolt pattern. The interesting thing is these two brake rotors are the same diameter, which works out really good. The only difference between them is, well, the bolt pattern, but also the height. As you can see, the Dodge one is a little bit taller. So that is where the Tahoverlanding kit comes in. And with it, they provides, I just put some paint on them a minute ago. They come bare metal. I just painted them. But with the kit comes this spacer that does that and makes up the difference between the two, plus some longer bolts. So you get 4 of these bolts and 4 of these spacers. They're going to go like this. So what this allows us to do is run Chevy GMT 800 rotors on the Dodge axle on our Chevy hubs with the Dodge brake calipers and pads because they're the same size. So if you are trying to do a GMT 900 brake upgrade on your GMT 800, you won't be able to do that on the front end. Some people do that because it's a cheap option to get the GMT 900 brakes, which are a larger brake system, a little bit better brake. They'll do that on the GMT 800 to give them a cheap brake upgrade. So you can't do that on the front. You can still do it on the back, I suppose, but the front's where most people do it anyway. So you can't do that. So you just have to get better braking rotors and pads and stuff if you want better braking. But it allows us to have the factory Ram parts, the factory Chevy parts. It's an odd combination, But it means that I can go down to any auto parts store and get my brakes, because all I got to do is tell them I want GMT 800 four-wheel drive front brake rotors, and that I need Dodge 2001 Dodge 1500 front brake pads or calipers. So it's an odd combination of parts, but it's using factory parts that are easy to get. The Dodge parts probably aren't quite as easy to get as the Chevy parts, because these Chevy parts are on trucks, Suburbans, Tahoes. They're on them. A ton of these vehicles are still on the road, so parts are really easy to get. One of the great things about this platform, parts are readily available and generally speaking cheap. The Dodge parts might not be quite as easy, but still our wearing parts like our ball joints and our axle joints, forgetting the name right now, but our wearing parts, our wearable parts, our consumables like our bearings and stuff are all going to be easy parts to get. They're not custom. They're not anything you're going to have to order from someplace. They're probably going to be in your parts store, which was another reason that I wanted to do this axle swap versus a lot of others, because I like to be able to travel. And the nice thing is I've had some minor issues here and there. It's usually minor stuff, but I can always get parts. I can always get parts for this Suburban. Usually they're in the store. So if we're out of town and I need an alternator, they're going to have an alternator. If I need a wheel hub, they're going to have a wheel hub, because there's so many of these on the road. One of the really good things about this platform is the ease of getting parts if you need them. So that being said, we're going to put these brakes on with these spacers and these longer bolts, and then I've got new calipers and pads here, so we're going to get the brakes put on. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the GMT 800 brake rotor on. We've got the Dodge brake caliper, and it's looking fantastic. I got both of them on, so I'm sure I'll have all these brakes off again at some point. These are used rotors. I'll probably get some new ones when I put it together for the final time, but kind of making sure everything's working, and I'm sure I'll have things apart multiple times, but at least now I can put the wheels on if I want to roll this axle around a little bit. So that'll be kind of nice. I can bolt the wheels on, be able to maneuver it a little bit without having to manhandle it or get the tractor in here. So that is all I'm going to do on the axles for now. I do have at least one more thing I need to do, but I don't have the parts for it yet, so we'll do that later. So I'll find something else to work on now. Okay, I got one more thing I want to do tonight, but first I gotta clean this up, because this has gotten to be such a mess that I can barely even work in here. So I'm gonna clean this up, and then I'm gonna get one more thing accomplished tonight. Alrighty, it's looking a little better now. Maybe the cleanest it's been since I started this project. So the one other thing I want to do tonight is I want to set the front of the Suburban down on these springs that came with this axle and get a measurement and see how far the weight of the Suburban is going to compress these springs. So this is gonna, I don't really need it right this minute, but later on that's gonna dictate kind of where the spring buckets get set on the frame and some things like that. And I want to also see, our Suburban has some extra weight in the front end. For one, we've got this massive ARB bumper and a winch, sticks way out the front, adds a lot of weight in the front. We also have the 6.0 motor instead of the 5.3, plus the bigger transmission. So all of those things combined, the front of our Suburban is heavier than a regular stock Suburban. So if you're just doing a stock Suburban, there wouldn't be any concern. I'm going to see what these compress to, and it's possible that I might need to go to like a 3/4 ton Dodge front spring or something like that, something a little bit stiffer. But I'm just going to see what they compress to, and we'll kind of go based off of that. If you got a Tahoe or a Suburban or Silverado without this, wouldn't be a concern for you. These springs will work just fine. I just have a few things that are a little different because we have a 6.0 swapped Suburban. So I'm gonna jack this up, stick these under here, set the frame, set the front of the Suburban down on it, and then measure from the floor to the top of the spring. You just see how much it's compressing these things. Okay, so these springs with no weight on them read right about 16 3/4 inches tall. Let's put some weight on them and see what they collapse to. Look out. Thirteen and a half. Okay, so I got the front of the Suburban. The weight is on those springs. I got my tires back here just in case something slips. So this fall on those under the frame. But those are collapsed down to 13 and a half inches is about what I've got right now. And we'll have a little bit more weight in the front end. Not much, but a little bit more. We'll have more weight overall. We don't have the rooftop tent on right now, but I also don't have any of this stuff in the back, no people. So we'll be adding additional 1,000 pounds of cargo, roughly. So it'll have a little bit, a lot of that is further back, but there will be some more weight on the front when we're actually loaded down with people and equipment, gear, rooftop tent, that kind of thing. Of course, we'll also have, when the camper's hooked up, that weight on the rear end is going to make the front end want to come up. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works with towing and some things like that, where things kind of end up ride height wise. I may end up having to adjust the spring buckets once I run it for a little while. I don't know yet. A lot of variables with the way that we use the Suburban and stuff. But it gives me a baseline to go off of. I'm sitting about 13 and a half inches. So we'll base our measurements off of that for the time being.